Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I'm thrilled to welcome someone who's an actress and singer who has appeared on Broadway. She starred in several fun series, including the new Gidget and the Bradys, and she's currently co-hosting with Ed Kalegi the new talk show Chatterbinge. Please help me welcome Caryn Richman. Caryn, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, Jonathan, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, you and I had spoken previously on the other podcast I do with Moosey Dreyer called Pop Culture Retro, and you were nice enough to agree to come on here as well, so I thank you. But so we might overlap on some things a little, but if I miss anything here, people can go check out the one on Pop Culture Retro. but I want to start here. So you grew up in Massapequa Park. What was your home life like? And I want to know in particular with regard to Judaism, were you observant at all?
So my parents were divorced. Before I even start, I just want to say thank you for doing this, for focusing on the tribe, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, so many of us, have taken Judaism into our beings. We grew up, but it's lovely. I don't usually think about it as much. It's more of a personal thing. So I love that you're doing this podcast. And as far as my upbringing, my parents were divorced, sadly. So my relationship to Judaism as a religion was very varied. I lived mostly with my mom and stepfather, where we were reformed in that house. Reformed, that was the congregation that we belonged to, a synagogue. But my dad was Orthodox.
Oh, wow.
And so we would visit my dad. In those days, they didn't really have joint custody the way they do today. We had visitation once a week. And I would literally go from, this home where we were serving bacon and, didn't have different sets of plates, to my dad's home on every Sunday of my childhood, where we had two sets of silverware and two sets of plates. And
That's how I grew up.
Really?
Yes.
So you had two separate homes. Your parents were divorced. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, we share that. So let me ask you then, because as far as a religion, I'm very clear on what my spiritual beliefs are, but as far as being an observant Jew, where did you end up being exposed to both of those?
We grew up in a kosher house. Like I said, we grew up kosher. We observed the holidays. We were very conservative, maybe slightly more conservative, but less than Orthodox, I guess, if you want to say that. I went to yeshiva as a kid as well. So, yes, I went to yeshiva. But, I've lived in many places, and we'll talk about that because I want to ask about you. But, I've lived in Mexico. I lived in Israel for a couple of years also. But, I strayed, I guess, in high school a little bit. I ate my first cheeseburger in high school. Yes, I know. I always thought my mom would put her head in the oven. But then when I had kids later on, I decided to come back to it. So to give them the foundation of having that choice. They could do whatever they wanted later, but I wanted to give them the foundation and the principles of Judaism. And it's also, to me, was like a thing, teaching kind of right from wrong. It's just, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. And, later on they could decide whatever, but I wanted to at least give them something.
Yeah, foundationally, and most religions, hopefully, are, the guiding force for us as young people, and understanding ethically what the rules are in life. I did not have children, so I can only imagine, though, had I had kids, that would have been a very important part, because, again, it's not even as much the spiritual beliefs. That is a personal thing, but as an education. And I know we're straying a little bit from your question. We'll get back to it. But I don't even remember what it was, to be honest. But
we're talking about your upbringing. That's what we were.
Okay, so we're still on track.
Yes.
I will say that for me personally, what the religion teaches and all I know is Judaism, has certainly guided me very much in my lifetime. And going back to my upbringing, I will say that it was confusing for me because for the high holidays, to be in an Orthodox setting where the women are sitting separate from the men, I loved it culturally. It was in pure Hebrew, so I understood very little. I did go to Hebrew school, but was a Hebrew school dropout, unfortunately. Didn't quite make it to my bat mitzvah, but we celebrated my 13th birthday anyway.
I was going to ask if you had a bat mitzvah. Okay.
We celebrated. We had a party, but I didn't quite have the discipline. My brother was bar mitzvahed in Israel, but
same with me.
I was. Yes. Oh my gosh, I want to hear about this. In Jerusalem?
In Jerusalem, at the wall. I had my at the wall.
Oh, how was that experience? I remember it as a 10-year-old, but my brother was 3 years older. But how is that for you as a Jewish young man? My gosh.
You know what? Fantastic. I loved having it there just to get the history and knowing that this has been done countless times to the, thousands of years, that someone there, I'm following along that other people have done the same thing. So I felt the history. I didn't appreciate it as much. And I lived in Israel early 80s. And then I moved and I had not been back until around 5 years ago. And it meant more to me then seeing it as an adult than I did as a kid. I couldn't absorb it all as a kid. And then it really hit me that, hey, I was part of this. I got to see someone else doing the same thing. And that, hey, I was part of this. I was part of that lineage. And it meant a lot to me.
Yeah, you're walking on hallowed ground there. That so many of our ancestors stood there before. It's very powerful, I think. And I sadly have not been back to Israel. I went when I was 10. I actually remember chasing little feral cats in the back of the King David Hotel.
Yes.
Because I was obsessed with animals. I couldn't help it. But my memories of Israel are very blurry, and I really look forward to going back.
You need to go back.
I know. I do. And it's been I had planned to go, and then COVID happened. So that was the end of that. And then lately it's been a little challenging to think about going, but my brother-in-law goes 3 or 4 times a year, no matter what. He's very philanthropic, is very involved in a charity over there. And,
I'll have to find out about that too.
Yes. And I will have to get more information because I respect.
My daughter's there now. She's there
right this minute. Oh my gosh. Where? What city is she in?
Jerusalem. She's in Jerusalem. She's there for the year.
Wow. Studying or?
Studying. My oldest went for the year, a gap year, and now my youngest is there for a gap year. My son didn't do it.
Oh my gosh. I'm jealous, completely jealous. I want to go. Okay. I need to go back. But anyway, just to sort of conclude your initial question, I had a very varied, youth when it comes to thinking about religion. And there were a certain amount of feeling, not only of just confusion, but guilt when I was at my mom and stepfather's house, which again was the majority of the time, but knowing that I was breaking a rule, as a young person, or I don't think I ever ate bacon in my mom's house.
It's funny. I'll talk about that in a second, but go ahead. Yes.
Bacon, lobster. I didn't have first taste of lobster until I was an adult in my 30s, I think.
I'll say this quickly. I'll interject. That I told you that in high school I had cheeseburger for the first time. But even when I went non-kosher, I could never bring myself to do the pork or the lobster because to me, that's the final taboo. I can't. I
know, isn't it so funny?
I could eat the other things. I cannot eat the shellfish like shrimp or crab or lobster or pork. I could not get past that final line in my head that I can't do this. This is my last thing. I can't cross this line.
So still to this day,
this day, I've never, no.
I can appreciate it completely. I mean, sometimes in my head, I rationalize that, oh my gosh, back in the day, it was much more for health reasons.
Right.
It was much, our religion and many things in many religions were developed based on the time. More so necessarily. I don't know, would it be so if all of a sudden Judaism germinated in present day? Would that be verboten for us? But it is a funny thing that you carry. And it's funny to me how in those days, especially, I would rationalize, I would eat milk with meat,
Right.
Not in my dad's home.
Right.
But then just interjecting this, I'm sorry to interrupt you. My dad would be non-kosher out of the house.
Well,
so
okay.
that was also confusing.
Right.
How about you?
No, that's the same thing. My dad did the same thing. My dad, I think, just did it for us, but outside of the house, he did. We didn't. The kids didn't, but he did. So he would sometimes, not in front of us, but later on, as we got to teens, he would have a steak or whatever when we went out. He would eat shellfish also, actually, but not pork, but he would have shellfish. He would like shrimp maybe or something, but not crab or lobster for some reason, but he did have shrimp.
So it's confusing. The whole thing was confusing. And that sort of answers your question as far as...
Did your dad get annoyed that you were there at your mom and your stepdad? Did he get annoyed that this was how they were letting you do things? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think sadly, as a general statement, my dad was very unhappy about a lot of things. I mean, in those days, it was not a happy divorce. That's a whole other story for another time. But
that's a different podcast.
Yeah, really. But that was one of many things that he was not happy about, especially because seeing him once a week for my brother and I wasn't necessarily enough to instill in us,
of course,
what he had hoped. And yet he had a tremendously powerful influence over me, to be honest, So I wish I could tell him today, sadly, of course, he's not here, that it did make a huge difference in who I am as a person in terms of...
What did your dad do?
My dad, I'm laughing just because they called him the Zipper King of Long Island. My father owned a zipper business. Yes. Obviously, there was a time later on where everything started to be made in the Orient, and he lost the business, sadly. But in his heyday, he had, he did really well. He was well known. He was a wealthy Long Island, upper middle class, well-established, respected Jewish man in the community. And my mom and stepfather were a kind of a different vibe, not quite as well-to-do. That was another thing that was confusing, not having to do with Judaism, but when you sort of go in and out of different socioeconomic situations in your lifetime where you're very middle class over here, whatever. And then once a week, my dad would come and pick us up in a Cadillac, a Cadillac, and drive us to this whole other environment. And it wasn't just religion that was confusing. There were a lot of things that were confusing. And I think choosing to be an actor, although it wasn't my original choice as a child, really, this is going to sound possibly very bizarre, but I think it really did come out of having to put on different personas and masks in different homes and be, especially as a little kid, you just want mommy and daddy to love you. So you be what they need you to be. Right. But when there's two separate things and there's a big divide, and I'm sure you felt some of that same thing. I don't know. Did you go and visit you lived with your mom when your parents...
No, I lived with both. My parents were not divorced. My parents...
we're not divorced. Forgive me. I misunderstood that.
No, my parents were not divorced. But what you say is very much... I think, I don't know what you remember. When we talked on the other podcast, I had wanted to be a theater major at one point as well, and I was in college. And we started talking about that, but it wasn't the place. I told you that my mom put the kibosh on that. And the reason was, and not just because she said, Jewish kids don't do this. They go into something else.
Right.
So that's it. And I do have like a little bit, still it's harbor a little bit of resentment because I really enjoyed doing it. But I think that's where the writing came in for me later on because it was still another creative outlet. And it's not putting on and it's not like a mask in theater, but it is still, I'm hiding behind the writing. I get to put into writing the things that I couldn't do in life. I control this world. The outside world, I have no say over. I can't do anything. I'm helpless to an extent, but this world I control. I get to make the final say what happens here.
Absolutely. And I know you do, it's interesting to me because you do a lot of young people's books and children's books, which is interesting only in that I'm not trying to play therapist here by any means.
By all means do.
I'm sure that would be not such happy news, but nor am I qualified. But what occurs to me is that was a time for you where you were possibly looking at these creative worlds, but not being allowed to go in that direction. And that's what you're writing for? Is there
a little bit of that? It's also, look, I feel like in some ways, I was very shy as a kid. I didn't get out of that till much, much later on. But I never got past the age of 13 mentally in some aspects.
Most men haven't, by the way.
That's true. But that's like, it's such an age that's filled with like adventure and wonder. And I was such a shy kid. So now my 13-year-olds in the book get to go and do all these things that I only wish that I could have done, have that sense of adventure. And it's such a great age, just growing up in general, because you're not yet at that teen year where everyone turns obnoxious and rebellious and that they know all the answers. It's like you still respect your parents and you're still, fearful of your parents, but you also are starting to explore yourself a little bit more and, where you fit in. So that's the kind of age that, the age that I like writing for.
I love it. I think it's a really important age too, because as you say, you have one foot in your childhood, but one foot in your young adulthood, not quite, but that's a very transitional time.
Absolutely. So
but I love that you get to, write about adventures.
Right. No, it's fun. And like I said, I love knowing that kids might, I guess identify with some of the things in my book. Even though I write outland, more fantasy and type things too, but kids might see themselves in the main characters. It's real world fantasy. It's based in the real world, but some fantasy in my book so far. But
I need to get your books.
Yes, you do. Well, I'll plug. The first one was Night of the Living Cuddle Bunny, so you have to go read it and give me a report back.
Is it about a cuddle bunny? Is it about
the cuddle bunnies are evil? It's the hot new Christmas toy that turns evil, and so it's like a Gremlins, type of thing, Fright Night type of thing.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so fun, though. I love it.
It was funny. So so let's go back to you. Okay, so you did not have a bat mitzvah. So when you came to that age, what was done? Did you do anything? I mean,
yes, but when I repeat it, it sounds so, I don't know, spoiled, la-di-da, but we went on a cruise to celebrate my bat mitzvah. I had never been on a cruise before, and we ate ourselves into oblivion, and that was our celebration of my 13th birthday. But, my father was traditional enough that it wasn't, I hate to even say this, it's so sexist, but it wasn't quite as important that I get bat mitzvah. I was a female, and in that
that's a lot of that. That's not just your father. That's a lot of, right, Jewish traditional families, right.
Or in Orthodox especially. I mean, it is important, don't get me wrong. He would have been so proud had I, finished those studies and really committed to it. Again, my brother was bar mitzvah, but for me, sometimes when I look back, I think, God, it's not too late. I can still get bat mitzvah. I can go back and sometimes I think before I leave this planet I think about it.
You should. We just interviewed on Pop Culture Retro. We just interviewed Barry Pearl from Greece.
Oh, I know Barry. We did Greece.
So
not together, but I know him.
So he said that he just like close to 70, he had his bar mitzvah. So
You can do it.
Yes.
I know you can. I've thought about it. I love that he did that. I didn't know that, but you know, it's so funny how as you get to an age where you really have a perspective of your life going backwards, and things that you have certain regrets about. I cannot tell you that, not being bat mitzvahed is one of the greatest regrets of my life, because it isn't. But is it something that I would like to achieve? Yeah, I think in honor of my father, almost as much as feeling, like
I think you should.
Okay, I'll check back.
Well, first of all, if that's the biggest regret that you have in your life, that's fantastic.
No, and it's not. Believe me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's what I was saying. It's not high on the list by any means. I have many regrets that come right before, above that. But
this one at least is fixable. This one's attainable.
Yes, it's something I can do something about. Most of them, you look back and there's nothing to be done. So, it's interesting. I'm going to look into it. I'm not going to declare publicly that I'm going to get myself bat mitzvahed, but I am going to investigate it. So there you go.
If you do it in Florida, I'll attend.
I love that. Okay, thank you.
So we started talking about a little this last time too. Was your dad supportive when you decided to go into theater? This is what I want to do. You said your mom was more, but I know that.
Yeah. Thank you for remembering that. Again, conflict. I am like two-sided all the way through, not clinically, but certainly, psychologically. My mom was a performer. She wanted to be a performer. When she married my dad, she was doing community theater, and he forbid it at some point. He said, my wife is not going to be doing theater. Very, very traditional. And it sounds awful when I say it out loud. Please know I loved and respected.
It was a different time. Yeah. Yes. Right.
It just wasn't something that was done. Right. And so I carried the torch in a weird way, or the baton, for my mom. And yet here is my dad that had no respect for that is not something that a respectable young woman does, especially a respectable young observant Jewish woman. But I wasn't really that. I was not at all that. I was all over the place. So I became an actor accidentally, which sounds weird. I was on track to be a social worker. I was in a 4-year master's program at Syracuse. And within that time frame, they had an open call for the Broadway show Grease. And I thought that would be so much fun, because I had done theater in temple plays and school plays and college community theater. And I thought, this is so fun. You stand on the stage.
And you're also a good singer also. So yeah, right.
I was okay. I didn't have the best instrument. That is not my strong suit. I'm an actress who sings and moves, as opposed to a full-on. I was very lucky, and the plays that I've done in my lifetime are more pop musicals, more. I don't have the instrument to play ingenues like in Oklahoma and, traditional Broadway plays, but I did have the vocal talents enough for a show like Grease, because honestly, it wasn't that demanding. Right. Grease rock and roll music, has a 10-note range or something. I don't know, maybe 12 notes in there. Still challenging, do not get me wrong. And Grease, the most wonderful show on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. Not the most, based on today's standards, but so fun. And so the short of that story was, I went down on a lark and ended up getting cast. So I understudied 3 or 4 roles on national tour, which got my feet wet. And, this little person who had done this for fun was all of a sudden in the professional world. I played Sandy on Broadway. I went on to reprise the role years later with Jack Wagner. I was in my 40s by this point. I don't think
we discussed that last time. You with Jack Wagner and Rex Smith, right? At different.
Yes, both of them. And I would thank you for knowing that.
Yeah, Rex is supposed to come on to Pop Culture Retro at some point. Actually, I don't.
Oh, he's wonderful. I don't even know if he would remember me, to be honest. It was
Have to
20, almost 30 years ago that we did it. But it made me laugh because this was after I had done, Soaps and Gidget and the Brady Bunch and some guest stars. And I literally was in my 40s playing, a 17-year-old in high school. But
Well,
from the
movie was
stage,
close too. Right.
nobody cares. But anyway, getting back to that question about my dad, I think he thought I was just going to play it out. And I think that's probably what would have happened. He always supported me, but did it make him happy? No, I think what would have made him happy was if I had gotten married at 22 or 23 and started having children and I was walking down a completely different path.
Is that what he wanted? Or he didn't want you even to have a career? He just wanted you to be like, just a Jewish family raising Jewish kids? Is that...
We never talked about it literally.
Right.
I'm guessing, not that he, again, was not supportive of me going to school and getting my degree. And he always let me know that he felt I was very smart and very capable and all of that. But if you ask me deep in his heart what he would have wanted for me, I think that's what it was. I mean, that's culturally what most Jewish dads want for their traditional kids, daughters especially, I'm guessing, don't know for sure. But I will say this, as I gained success, as accidental as it might have been, after Greece, I came out to Los Angeles very quickly. Things started to happen and it surprised me. I signed a recording contract, did an album with Tuxedo Junction, this disco group, and then disco ended. And then I went to do a soap opera in New York for 3 years, Texas. And, as with each step, I think my dad took more and more notice and thought, yeah, of course he was proud. But there was one turning point for me with him where when I got cast in Gidget, the new Gidget in the 80s, and the Jewish Journal did an article.
That's what I was going to ask about, the Jewish Journal. Because you had mentioned that last time, that made him really proud when he saw you featured in the Jewish Journal. So what was that? What was the feature about? What was the I have to look up that article too.
I do too, to be honest. And I think I have it somewhere like in a chest with piles of newspaper that are rotting away.
Oh, if you find it, please scan it and send. So.
I think I will. I think at the time there was a press release. So I remember at that time, the new Gidget, as far as publicity was concerned, nobody knew whether it was going to be the next biggest thing or not. Right. Sadly, it had a very mediocre, run. But as far as that casting process, it took months to find the new Gidget. They looked at every petite actress because Gidget.
And I told you, I loved that show. I really did, because I watched it back then in syndication. I was so sad when it was canceled. But go ahead, sorry. Yes.
Oh my God, I love that so much. I mean, to hear when it's, especially these days, we were further and further away from it. When I hear that people watched it, that makes me so happy. That really makes me happy. But I think at the time, the whole publicity push in the beginning, I remember we had, articles in Newsday, which was a big deal at the time, having grown up on Long Island. We were having articles in all kinds of papers across the country. And so the Jewish Journal was just one more of many at the time. And my, sort of foggy recollection was it was just about, Caryn Richman, but it did focus on the fact that I was a Jewish, female playing this role of Gidget.
And an island girl.
And a Long Island girl, yeah, all of it. And it also talked about the fact that the original Gidget, the real life person, Kathy Kohner Zuckerman, and this might be way too much Gidget information, but for fans out there, just a bit of trivia. Gidget started as a real life little girl, teenager, who moved here from Eastern Europe with her family And she would go down to the beach in Malibu and had all of these experiences with this new culture. And she would go home and tell her dad, and and who was a writer, by the way, Frederick Kohner. Is that his name? Yes. I think I have that right. And if I don't kill me. Yeah. Sometimes the old brain doesn't work the way it should. Okay. And she wanted to write this up. And finally her dad said, you know what? I'm going to write this for you, because she was not a writer. So she would come home and tell her dad all of these stories about Moondoggie and the Big Kahuna, because they all give each other nicknames. And because she was so petite, they gave her the name Girl Midget, which was Gidget. So that became this whole enterprise. And when they finally made it into a movie, Sandra Dee starred in it. And along the way, Deborah Wally, Cindy Carroll, Moni Ellis, Karen Valentine. Who am I forgetting? I'm the seventh. Sally Field. Oh my God, how can I forget that? She was my idol. So I was the seventh actress to play the role. But the point is, again, in the Jewish Journal, they were bringing home the point that Kathy Zuckerman, the original Kathy Kohner Zuckerman, was in fact Jewish as well.
That's amazing to me. I love that aspect, that the real Gidget was Jewish also.
Was Jewish, because the character was so wholesome, all-American, not ethnic. Right. And I'm certainly the only Jewish actress out of those of us who portrayed the character, starting with Sandra Dee. Nobody was Jewish. Right. And so the Jewish Journal in particular, I don't think any other publication cared what religion anybody was, but that was a fun little connection. And I know Kathy Kohner Zuckerman, and she's the greatest. But, we laugh about that sometimes too, or we have in the past. Just two Jewish gals playing the most all-American waspy characters ever.
She's someone I have to reach out to. So how did you first, because I remember we talked about it a little bit, but I didn't dive into it. I remember the whole search for the new Gidget. I remember that there was like this big talent thing that they were seeing everybody.
Yeah.
How did you first hear about that?
Oh gosh, that was just, like everything else. And agent gets a breakdown still to this day. And there's a character, and they think to themselves, what actors do I have on my roster that might fit this? I don't know how many petite, perky, all-American, spunky actors they had, actresses, I guess they called us at the time. But I just went in and had a normal audition. And in those days, we do so many auditions at home now and on tape, but in those days, you walked into the office and had a real audition.
But there are different things with auditions, but that one, and I remember that, and I remember for the New Monkeys, when they did that, those auditions made the news. And not every audition makes the news. Those auditions make because there's this huge talent search out that we're trying to find this person. So yours was like a big deal.
Yeah. It lasted like 2 months from my first audition to getting cast. Every time I kept going in, and I wish I remembered how many times I went in, but it was a lot. And then I wouldn't hear anything, and I would think, because I did say to myself, this is so much my role. Like in a profession where you hope as an actor that you can play many things. I'm going to sort of make a generalization. I hope I don't get killed for this. Not killed, that's too strong a word. But mostly, a lot of the times we as actors end up playing the essence of ourselves, and so when there's a role that was so much the description of who I was back then. It's not who I am now, but it certainly was my facade at the time. I was a people pleaser. I was, optimistic on the outside. What was going on underneath, we don't even have to discuss at the moment. But, my disposition, my persona is very Gidgety, even to this day at this old age, So the thought was for me, that's my casting. If I can at least get close.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And at the time I was also in transition. I remember thinking, do I keep doing this? I had such wonderful...
I was going to ask you about that too. I will ask you about that. So yes.
Yeah. I didn't know where I was going.
Right.
Here I was out in LA. I'm a New Yorker, Long Islander, far from family. I had friends out here. It was fun in LA, but it was getting to the point. I was already 28 years old at the time. And it was sort of like, okay, Caryn, what are you doing with your life? Is this the path we're walking, or, are we going back to New York? I actually had fantasies of like riding the bus and going to New York and meeting my friends in a bar in New York City after work, like they were all doing,
Right.
because I didn't have friends that were actors. So, getting Gidget was an absolute turning point. I mean, every marker in my career has been a turning point on some
How
level.
close were you? Because you just brought it up now. I was going to ask you about, like I said, that you said that there was a part of you that felt like, if you don't get this, I'm done. And the thing is, I know as an author, I know the same thing, because I get publishing is very much the same way, as is every creative field, because I get discouraged by rejections. I'm friends with other authors who regularly call me to be talked off the ledge. Like, if this book doesn't sell, it's the last one I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So people only see the glamorous side. So how close were you to like saying, this is it?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this has been a lifelong, conundrum at a great number of junctures. But at the time, I was closer to walking away than I was to staying. Mm-hmm. At that time. I do remember it. I remember I was going back and forth to New York. I still had an apartment in New York. And as I say, I had some fantasy about having more of a life that I wasn't living. We always want what we don't have, I think. And because my closest friends were having so much fun in the work field and again, having this New York life, that I wanted to go back to New York. And it wasn't that I couldn't try to do what I was doing in New York, but I had agents and managers and all of those people, and television was much more so, other than soap operas at that time, much more so out in LA. So, right. I was close. I don't know if I really would have, because I'm also one of those people that when I have a challenge, I really I'm competitive, I want it. So it would have been interesting had I not gotten Gidget. I don't know what I would have done, to be honest.
It's very tough. Like I said, all these creative fields are very tough, and they really pound you. They really make you feel,
oh man,
what I'm doing, okay. And look, we still feel like, it's like, I'm not 28 anymore either, like you said you were, and I still feel, what am I doing with my life? Because it really grinds you.
Well, it's these creative fields. Yeah, I have so much respect and admiration, because it's not A to B to C to D. It's all over the place. And we doubt ourselves. We have, insecurities. Are they going to like us? Is the work okay? Am I ever going to work again? Is anyone going to buy my book again? I don't know whether I'm crazy. Just am okay with that. There is something about the process that keeps you very present and very, in your life, as opposed to sort of doing your life by rote, because there is no repetition here. So I think that ends up being a good thing. Sometimes it's a bit much, because the insecurity, the highs and the lows are really challenging. But if you're a bit of an excitement junkie, it's a little bit like, going to Vegas, because there's a part. Am I going to get it? I don't know if you feel like this as an author, but, I'm going to try. Do I get it? Do I get it?
It's constantly hustling and like trying, and it can wear on you, and it could definitely eat away at your self-confidence, for sure.
Oh, yeah. There is no question. And you said a really powerful statement. It looks glamorous. It's not glamorous at all. I mean, that is not the word I would describe at all. That's not a word I would use. I think what's glamorous to people, though, is the celebrity of it.
Sure.
And that is not a part of the world. It's part of the world if you aspire to that. But if you're looking just at the work, and sometimes that comes, as a product, as a result of doing the work, and then you get that notoriety.
Yeah, but people only see, hey, I'm seeing Caryn every week on a TV show, and they don't see I've gone to like 20 auditions and didn't get those parts. Right. So that's the only thing that they do see. And that I have to, am I going to not get this month by this because I don't have that, So there's a dark side to it that people don't comprehend. They don't see all the work that has to be done to get to that spot that they find, that little moment that they see.
And even, look, acting is not easy. And if it looks easy, then that's a wonderful actor, because that is the job of the actor, to make it look like it's natural and make it look like those words are coming out of your mouth for real. But I just had a flash on something. It not only is it not glamorous, even when you get the job, I remember on Gidget having so much insecurity. Not about the role. We didn't have time. We were shooting very, very quickly. But, imagine you're a woman in a bikini on television. Now what I wouldn't give for that body today, but back then, at the time, I was terribly self-conscious, and they kept putting me in, skimpier bikinis, two-piece bikinis. This predated Baywatch and an era where that became more, more normal, I suppose. But it asked a lot, not just the bikini part of it, but it was a demanding role. We shot very quickly. I won't bore your viewers and listeners with how we shot it. We touched on it when I did your
Everyone wants to see it. It was insane. If people want to see it, go to Pop Culture Retro interview and see it. But it's insane.
We were just doing it so quickly, and it was chaotic. And so
you shot like many episodes at once. You just like, here's a scene from this episode, here's a scene from that episode. We don't know what we're doing. Yeah, it
was five shows, 5 shows out of sequence. And so what that translates to, very briefly, without boring you, is if we were at the beach, we shot any scenes from 5 different scripts that were in those scripts, one after another. So there was a craziness about it. Now, having said that, it was so fun, and the cast was amazing, and all of that. That was one of the great, amazing joys of my life. But talking about, what looks glamorous, it's not glamorous. It's hard. It's grueling. There's insecurities. So it's not always as it seems, and especially a show like Gidget, where it's just lollipops and rainbows and butterflies. And,
It was such a good look. I liked it for many reasons too. I love I like all those '60s, those beach movie things, and I love Gidget too. It was a good form of escapism. Gidget every week.
Yeah.
That was fun. What was the first moment in your life that you started doing acting and started where you said, "Wow, I can't believe I'm sharing this stage or screen with this person who I'd been a fan of"? What was that first moment for you?
Oh my gosh, I've had a number of them. From the moment I was cast in Grease, I felt that, to be honest. I don't think there's ever been a time where I have not had the wherewithal to say to myself, be present, because this is amazing. And even on projects, look, I've had a wonderful career. I'm so grateful for it, but it's been a mid-level career. I never had my, Friends sitcom. We have no control as actors in what we get cast in. I mean, sometimes we do, but you get cast in something and you don't know whether it's going to be the next hit or it's going to fail miserably. And so we just celebrate every win. You get a job, and actors are like, yay, I get to go to work and do what I love. So So to your question, I do remember on Texas was the beginning of me doing a lot of on-camera work. So that was a soap on NBC that only ran for 2.5 years, but I was on it from beginning to end. And there were people at that NBC studios in Brooklyn, that I started to get to know, and some of the beautiful Beverly McKenzie, Carla Borelli, the women, the grand dames of that soap opera had been very big in the soap opera world. And I do remember thinking, wow, they didn't even talk to me, not on purpose. I had no scenes with them. And I was this little forlorn country western singer playing that on Texas. But, every step of the way, there's been moments. Gidget working, I didn't know Dean Butler at the time because I hadn't watched Little House on the Prairie.
Which shocks me. Yes.
I know. That's crazy. Are you being sarcastic or seriously?
No, I'm serious because it was such a popular show. And
I know. I don't think I was the biggest. That was something in our household. We did not watch a lot of television.
Oh, okay.
We watched Sunday nights and World of Disney. We watched Ed Sullivan. I'm totally dating myself. But we had some rules around how much screen time we had. And Little House was after I was I would have been a little older by that time. What years was Little House? I don't know, but
70s to early 80s, I believe.
Yeah, so you see, I was already in college.
Right.
So I was sort of past that. It's true of the Brady Bunch. I never watched the original Brady Bunch. I only watched it in reruns. So I sort of am old enough that I was too cool and groovy to be watching Little House on the Prairie at the time, But William Shallert, who was my dad on Gidget, who played Patty Duke's dad, Patty Duke. I watched that show religiously. I was little, and I watched it when I stayed home from school. Did you watch the Patty? You're too young.
I've seen episodes. Didn't watch it when it was on, but I've seen episodes of Patty, and I loved William Shallert. He's such a great character. Oh. So many things.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. And here's one experience I had, though. I will never forget this. We were filming Gidget at Warner Brothers Studios. So when we weren't on location at the beach or wherever we were supposed to be, we had a soundstage that replicated our house. The exteriors were shot on the Warner Brothers ranch. Our house was also the Bewitched house, which I also thought when I heard that was one of those moments of, because I watched Bewitched religiously. But we were in the commissary, the dining room on the Warner Brothers lot, and I was walking with Dean Butler. We were going to lunch. You do
know who Moosey dates, right? I just want you to know that.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
I know. I recently just was in contact with them. Okay. They're in Europe. Okay. Anyway, yes. I was walking past a table and somebody reached out and grabbed my hand, and I looked down and it's Jane Fonda.
Oh my!
Who was and who was shooting on the lot at the time.
Right.
And she said to me, "I have to tell you that my son loves your show."
That's amazing.
So, and I couldn't talk. I was an absolute idiot. Dean had to pull me away because I was falling over myself. And my subtext was, oh my God, Jane Fonda knows who I am. She knows who I am. She knows I exist. This is unbelievable. But whatever I said, I'm sure I was an absolute moron, but, and he did drag me away so that I didn't embarrass myself. But that was one of those moments where I thought, oh my God. And that was an anomaly, but still, Jane Fonda knew who I was.
Incredible.
For a second.
It's fantastic. Yeah. So, okay. So I want to ask now about the Bradys. You talked about the Brady Bunch. All right. You played in the 90s reboot. You were Greg Brady's wife on it. So I'm curious now. You had your own series at Gidget. But when you go to fan conventions now, do more fans come up to you for Gidget or because you were part of this Brady's, which is such a cultural phenomenon,
It's so funny that you mentioned it. Yesterday, I took part in a Facebook Live.
Oh, wow. I wish I knew that. Oh,
you can still see it. Okay. You can still see it. I I will answer your question, but this is an aside for a second. We went to the actual Brady house.
Oh, wow.
Chris Knight, who played Peter Brady, the middle son, his wife, Kara, and I are very good friends, I'm happy to report, and with Chris as well. I have a very rich history with Chris Knight, and we live 10 blocks from each other
wow.
down here in Southern California. But anyway, they are doing a thing called the Brady Experience where people
Yes,
get
I
to
saw
buy
that.
lottery tickets because the house is not zoned for tours. But the house, the original Brady house, after HGTV restored it back to its historical,
TV show look.
yeah. This lovely woman bought the home, Tina, and is wanting to somehow have it be open to people. The only way to do that was to do this lottery and you win a chance to come and meet the Bradys. But it was the first time I had ever been in the house was yesterday.
Oh, awesome.
And I was literally freaking out. Literally unbelievable experience. Okay. So you're asking, how does it feel to have your own series and go over to be a sort of a lesser part?
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just because no, it's not to be a lesser part. It's that you are in your own series, and yet because of the cultural, awareness, I guess, of the Brady Bunch, when you go to conventions
Oh,
now,
that was your question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Boy, geez, I need more coffee. It's early here in LA. I would say at this point, it's more for the Brady Bunch.
that's what I was curious about. That's amazing.
Yeah. I think Gidget, first of all, Gidget had a very specific audience and we had no longevity. We don't rerun. The reason we don't rerun is because of the music rights. They licensed Beach Boys music and Beatles music and Janity music that in those days they didn't have a sense that we were going to have a universe of streaming. So they licensed it for like 5 years and now it's too expensive. They would have to pay through the roof and the
That's
show
why
just...
Moonlighting was not streamed for. Now it is again, finally, but Moonlighting was not streamed for a while.
Was it?
Music rights.
Well, I know the new Gidget, somebody is uploading some really great quality HD episodes on YouTube. So if you ever want to just check out an old Gidget, get on YouTube and put in the new Gidget. We have some wonderful episodes up there, but it doesn't rerun like the Brady Bunch reran and continues to rerun for a million years. It will never go away. And so every generation, has the ability to watch the Brady Bunch. And so that really lives on. And I'm just a tiny part of that, enterprise, but it's amazing. The fans are amazing. And to watch, them continually reinvent themselves. Chris and Barry have a podcast.
Chris was on Pop Culture Retro, and he was great to talk. We've spoken to Chris and Susan so far.
Oh, so the whole, you certainly know about the Brady Bros and all that good stuff. Yes. That's the name of their podcast. But, they're wonderful and well-deserved that the series lives on. But yeah, so that very long answer to your very short question was, it's definitely more of the Brady Bunch. I mean, I think sometimes, people might look at me and just say, gosh, you look familiar. I get a lot of like, did I go to school with you? Oh, yeah, and it always surprises me when somebody remembers. I'm always so grateful, that, look, what we do, we're not curing a disease here. We're entertaining. And if it meant something to someone, that's absolutely lovely.
I had loved the new Gidget, so I was absolutely thrilled that we got to discuss that with you. So
yay, thank you.
So all right, now I have to ask also there too. Last time we spoke, you talked about filming the Christmas special, Humbug the Elf. Now recorded several Lifetime Christmas movies. First of all, I love Christmas movies. I love Christmas music. I devour them. How ironic is it to you that you have this nice Jewish girl from Long Island who has now started several Christmas movies?
Well, here's the perfect thing for this podcast in particular. Yes, it's ironic again along the lines of I played the most all-American, waspy character ever, the new Gidget. Brady Bunch as well, fairly middle America, not not a sense of Jewish
Right.
culture in that environment at all. And I first of all, I love doing Christmas movies. And again, I'm always grateful to work, especially as you're moving along in your life, that anyone, says, come on and play with us is always, a great joy. But this is fun though, because I talked to you right before Humbug the Elf, right? Or I had just done it. Is that what you said?
Just finished it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You said that. I played a Jewish character.
Oh, did you? Okay.
And that was very much a part of the storyline. So it was fun to see you're working on a set, so obviously they have to dress the set, meaning they're bringing things in to make it feel like it's a real live place.
Right, okay.
And my house had menorahs and dreidels and chocolate little gold coins and a mezuzah and and it was the little story behind Humbug the Elf is this is a young woman who works in the mall as a Christmas elf. This sounds dark, gets mugged on her way home, loses her memory, she's in her elf outfit. She believes she's Humbug the Elf because that's what her badge says. She's rescued by the handsome young leading man. And they come to my house. I'm his boss. So I'm the leading man's boss. And she keeps talking about Christmas, and I keep saying, not over and over, but it's such a cute line. I say, I'm Jewish. She says something about Christmas. I say, oh, no, I'm Jewish. And then she just calls me Jewish through the entire script. That is my name. So this is an adorable script written by Candace Kane, directed by Candace Kane. I have to give her a plug, Gemelli Films. But it's a really cute script. But in keeping with our theme here in this podcast, I really loved getting to play a Jewish character on a holiday movie. I'd never done it, and I did it with great pride. It made me smile.
I can't wait to see. Any Hanukkah movies in the future at all?
I wish, the thing about Hanukkah, though, come on, we just don't have the festivity.
No,
we don't have the color. Did you celebrate Christmas in your house at all?
Never once, and everything. It's funny because I say it. It was all Hanukkah. I was so good about keeping the Santa Claus secret from the Gentile friends. I was so good. I never said, hey, I know something you guys don't. I never did that either. I was so good with it. But my parents listened to Christmas music too, because they love the Christmas songs, and I do too to this day. I still love Christmas music. I annoy my kids with it because I do love it, but I won't, I didn't celebrate it, but I do love the thought of it. I love the feeling
and the festivity of it. It's just a beautiful time of the year, and I love when Hanukkah and Christmas intersect.
Yes,
and in keeping with going full circle, in my mom's house and stepdad's house, we always had a Christmas tree. We made it into a Hanukkah bush. We hung little bagels and dreidels, but we did our best to sort of do a hybrid, I think. And yet another thing.
Was your stepdad Jewish or not Jewish?
Yes. But again, they were so reformed.
Okay.
It was much more a cultural thing and not an observant thing in the slightest. Never went to synagogue. Again, it was crazy because at my dad's, he would go on Shabbos. He would go, for the high holidays. But many of the holidays, he lived in walking distance from the synagogue. That was a prerequisite.
Sure.
I don't remember. I'm sorry?
I know many who do that. And on the high holidays like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we never traveled by car either. We walked to official,
Me too. And I suppose as an adult, a long living adult, I've come up, with my own hybrid way of being Jewish, if that makes any sense. I mean, certainly, it's it really is a big part of who I am, but it's a quiet part of who I am. It's in me. It's just my blood and my soul.
I was going to ask about that too.
Yeah.
Let me come back to it because I want to discuss your talk shows there too. Before we get to Chatterbinge, I'll get to that quickly there too. I also saw, which I had no idea about. You were on a talk show, like kind of a big part with Larry Elder also.
Oh, wow,
How did
that was
that
a
come
loud laugh.
about?
How did that come about, did you
Yeah.
say? I I was at an autograph show, and this was now years ago, sitting next to Larry Elder and
Wow.
his then manager.
Okay.
And at the time, Larry Elder, I think he still is, a very strong presence.
Yes.
This was way
It's a
before his
very big
political.
question.
Yeah. And very well known for the fact that he's a libertarian and, his political views. And we just got on famously. And then he had this opportunity. I kept in touch more with his manager than Larry. But when you're at these autograph shows, you're there for, days on end. No, 2 days. And there's time. You just spend a lot of time with people. So you really get to know them. So he had this opportunity when they fired. Who did they fire on the morning show originally?
I don't know.
Imus? Was it Imus? No.
Imus was fired, but was he on that show? I know Imus was fired.
I think, gosh, see, this is where memory, I have to write everything down. Whatever it was, I believe it was Imus, was fired from the morning show on MSNBC. Maybe it wasn't. And they were looking for replacements. So they came to Larry Elder and they gave us a shot. And they were looking for a foible, a co-host for Larry Elder. And given my belief system, they felt it would be a good match for Larry. I'm certainly not aggressive in my beliefs, but I have my own beliefs. And I had done enough on camera, straight to camera, hosting over the years and spokesperson. And they just took a chance and thought it would be a good match. And it was one, again, I know I keep saying this about certain things, but that was one of the most exciting things I've ever done.
I believe it, I'm sure. You've had a lot of fortuitous things happen to you throughout your career also. Just like, timing is like so crucial to a lot of things. That's fantastic. So let me talk about Chatterbinge.
Did you freeze? You froze for a second.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, good.
We good? Okay, yes.
It froze for a second, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so Chatterbinge.
So because you come across, I need to see the Larry Elder clips, but you come across as such a natural talk show host, especially you have that talk show voice also. So it was no surprise to me that you've done it before. So, like I said, I had spoken to Ed Kalegi before you came on Pop Culture Retro. Really nice guy. How did it come to be that you were going to become a co-host on the new talk show? What was that process? How did it happen?
Oh, it's the best story for me. I'm thrilled, really, really happy to be a part of this. So Ed had done an interview, a podcast with me over Zoom, I think last October. And much like we're having here, sometimes you have a connection with someone that you're talking to. Sometimes it really doesn't unfold that way. I feel that with you. I felt that with Ed.
Yeah.
Thank you. I felt it with Moosey as well. And sometimes it just turns more into a conversation, which was a lot of what Ed and I were doing, again, much like we're doing here. And he had a terrible sound issue. He sort of had to go back in, and the Zoom, something happened that wasn't great. And I think he aired that on his podcast at the time. I know that he did, with the disclaimer that the sound was awful, and we're, probably going to do this again at some point. And that was at the time, The Weekend with Ed Kalegi. Right. And he has a very long and rich history in the broadcast world.
Yes,
so, And so when he came out to LA in the beginning of this year, we met in person and did an interview. And, again, it's sort of like dating or marriage or work. It either works or it doesn't work. And we had a really fun, back and forth, and it was real. And I think, he has this wonderful broadcast voice. I don't know what I have, because sometimes my brain just says things, I just have
You're very natural. You really, no, you're very natural. First of all, you do have that voice too, but you're very natural and you're just easy to talk to. I feel it here, like I said, but you just come across as just a conversation instead of the podcasts that I hate are like question, answer, no talk. It's just
Right,
like
right,
I'm
right.
waiting. So that's not you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And yet I didn't know that that is something that might lead to that. But what did happen was this, again, timing is everything. Ed was in talks with a different company, Audio One, to take his show and grow it in a syndication world and also in the radio world. And he, more specifically, was looking for a co-host. And so we had such a grand time and just got deep and then got silly and we're all over the place. And Audio One had heard that, and a number of other people in his life had heard that. And almost at the same time, he was texting me, or I'm sorry, emailing me saying, we got a good response, yay. And I sort of in passing just said, oh my gosh, we should do something together. And then he wrote back, funny that you should ask that. So that's how the conversation, or say that. That's how that conversation started. And he, he gets business done. He's like, boom, left the weekend with Ed Kalegi, started Chatterbinge. He had this name in his head for years. He had a concept. I jumped in. We're on our 5th episode.
Nice.
And honestly, I'm learning because it's one thing to be a guest, and
That's what I was going to ask you. You've been a guest so many times. How is it being on the other side now?
There's a learning curve for sure, and I took my lead and continue to take my lead from him. The setup is that this is a long podcast radio show, 2 hours. In those 2 hours, he has 4 interviews. He does the interviewing. I'm starting to jump in. And he's had some amazing guests.
I saw.
And I did my first interview the other day. But to your point, let me finish that thought. Then we record 4 little segments, about 11 minutes long, on little slice of life stuff, silly stuff.
To ask you about, yes.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Does the toilet paper go under or over?
You have regular topics like your favorite snack foods, your first jobs, or can you remain friends with exes? So just regular conversations. Did you two make the list of topics ahead of time, or he kind of surprises you each week?
No, we made them together. And in fact, in the world of, delineating responsibility, that's going to be much more my responsibility going forward, because he's doing so much and he can barely see straight. He's so busy. But we also do some serious ones, though. He allowed me very recently to do an extended version of a segment about the feral cat population, which, again, it goes back to my insanity and obsession about helping animals. And we do talk about some very deep things as well, insecurities as children. And he laughs. He keeps telling me that I am acting as his new shrink, which is music to my ears, because originally I wanted to be a social worker. So that brings it full circle. So if I could be Ed Kalegi's shrink, that's okay.
So there's nothing that's off limits. You're whatever, you're allowed to discuss any topic.
Yes. And I notice that as I give myself more freedom, we decide ahead of time what we're talking about in our recorded segments. We're doing them. He's in New York or New Jersey. I'm in LA. So there's that. But we're having so much fun. And I am noticing for the first time now on week 5 that I'm getting bolder, because as you say, it's very different. When I'm here with you, I know what I'm supposed to do, and you make it easy, and we, go back and forth. But when you're doing you, that is a different skill set. So I wasn't sure what I was doing in the beginning, and now I'm just a bit looser, and
It sounds very good. I've listened to several already. So
well, thank you. Some of it I'm critical, so I say, oh my
we're
God.
always critical of ourselves, but you're doing great. So,
Thank you for that. Appreciate your vote of confidence and your encouragement and support. And I know I speak for Ed when I say thank you.
I enjoyed talking to both of you. So, all right, I'm going to circle back now to the beginning. We started this off by talking about how I was growing up Jewish. let's talk about being Jewish now. So we're living in a time with such terrible anti-Semitism. And I don't know how it was for you growing up with that regard, but, I told you I lived in many places, mostly in New York, but I also lived in Mexico and in Israel for a time. And here's the thing, like, I'm not a fighter, and I tell this, I don't like fighting, but I've been in many fights in my life. Just about every single time has had something to do with me being Jewish. So, and I'm happy that my kids never saw that real ugliness. But in the last couple of years, that's gone out the window. There's there's a hatred and there's an ugliness that I've never seen as intense as it is now. And here, we're both creatives. I'm in the writing world, and there's been such, and I won't say an undercurrent because it's been more than an undercurrent. It's been pretty out in the open, but it has seeped into many areas of publishing. Have you seen that in your field at all? Because, I've seen it even by people I once respected and considered friends that I say, that's how you feel. So how is it, have you seen it in your world, I guess?
Well, first, can I ask you, what do you mean you've seen it in your world? That you've experienced it personally?
No, I've seen in publishing where lists are made of, who's a Zionist, and that's like, don't support them, boycott their books, and this one, and also that everything, even Jewish authors get review bombed, at times there too. And let's also say that I was a former literary agent. Besides this, I would send out, and when I first started writing, my agent at the time, and I was writing a book on a Jewish mythology, told me, make it less Jewish. This is a book on fantasy about Jewish mythology. Make it less Jewish because we want it to sell. And even as a literary agent, I've sent out Jewish authors' works that were Jewish themed, and like, oh no, we already acquired a Jewish book. So. Oh
my gosh, there's like a quota of Jewish.
Right, that's what it is. So there's it's. A lot of times it's overt, a lot of times it's not. And even like this, when I post this podcast, this Jewish podcast, and it doesn't even have to be, we're not discussing anything happening in the Middle East. Not at all. I get comments, ugly comments underneath in the comments, which I delete them all or whatever it is. But like I said, it doesn't have to have anything to do with, something serious. We just be talking like this, and I will get still like hate comments. So that's why I was curious how it was.
Well, two things. And again, I know that we don't want to get deep into politics here, or maybe we do, but I don't think we do. Being a Zionist and being a Jew, that's a whole podcast in itself, I fear, because they're two different things. And in our political climate, being pro-Israel is controversial, sadly.
But that's the thing that makes it easy for them to hide behind. Oh, I can say all these things as long as I substitute Zionist for Jew. I can say whatever I want. And that's the world that we live in. And I don't hide it at all there too. This is me. This is who I am. I'm, I might as well put Zionist on my bio in there too. So,
I mean, you have a powerful, strong, perspective, and I have the utmost respect for it. And I think, the fact that we live in a climate where we can't have an opinion and a passionate perspective, we could just go down that rabbit hole along with our country.
You don't have to talk about this if you don't want. I was just curious.
No. I have things to say, very strong things to say. But the short answer to your question is, I think because I don't lead with that as much as you do, it's not prevalent for me. I don't think I've ever lost a role because I'm Jewish. I mean, someone might have looked at, I don't know what happens on the other side so I'm not necessarily in a similar situation in that respect. Have I lost roles because I look more ethnic? I'm not a particularly, can't even say that word, particularly ethnic looking, because I played a lot of all-American characters. So, not that I would not welcome looking more, whatever that even means. It's such a stereotype. But I don't feel like I experienced that. Now, do I have my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the entertainment business right now? Absolutely not. So is it going on? I have no doubt. And certainly I am pro-Israel, and certainly I am a Jew, and I'm proud of it. And I would never hide that from anybody. And if someone does not, welcome me into their world because of that, then I'm sad, and there's nothing that I can do to change that. But I'm also not a crusader publicly either. And much of my family is, so I'm sad, though. I'm sad for all of us. And we're increasingly more challenging to accept each other. And it's a bit of a nightmare, that I will say.
I agree. Yeah, I don't think, I think I've been much more of a crusader now than I've ever been in my life.
Well, you have to be.
Yeah, I think I'm much more like, I don't care what, this is, I'm going to get it out there. And this, this is what I feel. This is one of the reasons I started doing this podcast, also just to amplify Jewish voices and Jewish, people as well. So, okay, so let's go back. So we've done that, and you've expressed how you feel about being Jewish now. Also, now here's the last things. What are you working on next? You have so much going on. So.
Oh my gosh, you know what? It honestly, in this last 2 months since Humbug the Elf,
Right.
I mostly have been working on the Chatterbinge, on the podcast. And I wish I could tell you that I have something coming up next week. I've been lucky enough to keep the momentum going. But I was just thinking the other day, it was like that, you talk about like insecurity. I was thinking, am I ever going to work again? I don't know, and the business.
You still do want to, you still love doing acting though, right?
More than anything in the world.
Okay.
I am my happiest, and I think at my best as far as productivity when I'm working. And I love it. I love it. And as long as someone lets me, I will do it till the day I'm no longer here, hopefully. But I will say that, from the last few months have been somewhat slow, and I've had opportunities to go, the way the acting world is panning out these days, there's things going on in Atlanta. I have Nashville agents, Utah agents, you have an agent in all parts of the country, but I'm much pickier about working in those parts of the world in terms of all the travel and all of that.
Right.
If it's not something, I'm sort of at that place where I'm hopeful that I can go bigger. And what I mean by that, because I was having this discussion with my agents and managers, I have loved every minute of being in this sort of Lifetime Hallmark, or wherever the Christmas movies are airing. I never would want to change that, and I hope I get to do those forever as well. But I've also gotten away from episodic television and hour dramas, and that was my beginnings, television. If that even exists anymore, in whatever form, streaming or whatever.
There's so many different forms of it now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm starting to focus more on that because I am realizing I've learned some valuable life lessons that, it seems to work that when you put your energies and mind to something and start facing in that direction and doing the work, that will lead you there. If I'm complacent and just sort of, thinking, oh, this is nice. Okay, I'll do that. I think it's not going to work in my favor. And I've been a bit complacent. So I am strongly focusing on getting back into more of the hour-long dramas.
I hope so.
And comedy, and I will keep you posted. But in the meantime, Chatterbinge is keeping me very, very busy and having fun.
I've enjoyed the episodes that I've heard so far. I hope there are many, many more, and I'd love to see you more on episodic television as well.
Thank you. I love that. Me too. I'm going to put it out there.
And how can people follow you on social media?
I said this for your last podcast. I'm really not good on social media, but it's Caryn Richman on Facebook and at Caryn Richman on Instagram. And what else should I have? Is Twitter a thing, or is that going away?
I'm still on Twitter very actively. So,
Are you? Oh, okay,
yes.
then I need to get back on Twitter. I was there for a minute and it just got overwhelming for me, but I'm not good on social media. I feel the pressure there's so many ways to be in touch, and it's like, I can't do it.
Well, now everyone, youth is on TikTok. So,
Well, that's a big reason why I'm not on TikTok. But if that's my audience, I need to get on there. Okay. Right. I love it.
Well, Caryn, I want to thank you again. Seriously, it's such a pleasure talking to you both times now. And I've had a lot of fun just, getting to find out more about you right now.
Thank you, Jonathan. And will you come and be on Chatterbinge so we can learn more about you?
Anytime. Yes, you don't even have to add anytime.
I would love that. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing here. Shalom to you and your viewers.
Well, I'll sign us on off and then I'll talk to you. Well, again, This has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. And again, a very special thanks to Caryn Richman. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.